Assalamu alaikum and hello viewers, as well as new viewers within the UK and worldwide, wherever you are. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Samina Chughtai and I'm your host for today. Welcome to the Let's Talk show, British Muslim TV. We're live once again here in the studio in Wakefield, and we're also live on Twitter as well as Facebook. So, like always, please do join in this amazing topic of discussion. Viewers, if you have any questions, please do ring in with your questions on 01924 231 083. Alternatively, you can also WhatsApp on 07585 835 150. So please don't be shy, don't be hesitant. It would be great to hear from you tonight. Do send in your questions, or you can WhatsApp like I said, or you can ring in directly. So we have another amazing topic of discussion today. So I hope you're all comfortable. You've got your cup of tea, you've got your coffee, a hot drink, cold drink, slice of cake. But please do relax and enjoy the topic of discussion today, which is the cost of living crisis. Yes, it's an amazing topic, and it's one of those hot topics, for the last few months at least, which no doubt is affecting the nation. The nation, whether you live in the south, whether you live in the north, throughout the UK is affecting us, and worldwide. The cost of living crisis. So for this, we have an amazing guest speaker today. And as you all know, we're all feeling the pinch. It's very, very difficult for all of us. So wherever you are in the country, no doubt you know what you're experiencing. Inflation is sky high. The cost of living has increased incredibly. We're now suffering a difficult winter in the sense that utility bills have increased. And in the future, there's going to be rising inflation more so, and the cost of living is going to increase more so as well. So unfortunately, it is a difficult time, but, we've got to be optimistic. And no doubt, if we're optimistic, we've got to be optimistic, and we've got to try to get through this winter. So, as we've seen in the media, we've come across these horrific stories where people are struggling to survive. They're struggling to cope with the increased expenses, with expenditure. So you have, for example, the price of gas and electricity, particularly gas, that's increased by at least 80%. So you must have heard of stories whereby people are not actually putting the heating on. So without any further hesitation, I would like to invite this amazing guest speaker. He actually has a background in local business and coordinating local charity efforts. He also has been highly involved with Food Bank and helping those individuals less fortunate during this current climate. He is also an experienced fundraiser. He is a TV presenter, a voiceover artist, as well as has been involved in current affairs commentator. He's also currently a Labour candidate for Kirklees. So, without further hesitation, I would like to welcome our guest speaker today. His name is Imran Safdar. He is now currently on. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction there. It's a very, very worrying situation that we find ourselves in.
By the way, I didn't say Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, Imran. Thank you for taking the time out and participating in the show today.
Yeah,
particularly when it was lastminute.com.
I've actually, thank you for having me on. I've been in touch with food bank coordinators. I've done a bit of volunteer work in that sector myself. I actually spoke to a couple of local councillors. I spoke to Councillor Paul Davis, the Kirklees West Yorkshire Cabinet member in this area, who's responsible for the cost of living crisis in this particular area, or trying to challenge that issue. And he told me today that the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, which is an independent organisation, said that just in this part of West Yorkshire, in Kirklees alone, 36% of children are living in poverty. And this is a sad indictment to the record of the government leading the 6th richest economy in the world. And we've got billions and billions of wealth stored in the City of London, in British overseas territories, and in fact, a bit of a byproduct of empire is that we've got various British overseas territories that are tax havens. So the system is fundamentally broken. We've got children freezing, unable to eat properly, pensioners withering away, losing weight. This cost of living crisis is not just linked to the awful invasion of Ukraine. It's not just a byproduct of international trade problems linked to the pandemic. Some of these issues are man-made and self-inflicted. And you know, we could talk about Brexit. We could talk about the hit in the UK economy. We could talk about how inflation is hitting the UK worse than other G20, G7 economies. But we're going to be all night about that. But right now, I mean, I've got a fact now from The Guardian, actually, is that despite the government's £400 rebate on bills and the lump sum payments, which I know you're going to mention later on, vulnerable households, that's people with disabilities, a lot of BME, our own Asian and Muslim households, their bills are going to be 83% higher this winter. We're looking at bills. Right now, there's some type of caps right now. There's some type of government support. But by April, we're predicting bills are going to hit around about £4,000 per average household. And as you know, Samina, is that some of the Asian households, we live in sometimes quite large houses, big Victorian houses, houses that have been extended, lots of family members, high ceilings. So the bills are getting astronomical now. And as a result, food banks are now having to provide lots of energy, gas, electric top-up support. So food banks are running out of money, they're running out of food. The situation is heartbreaking. And I, myself, and my fellow campaigners, councillors, food bank operators, volunteers from across the political spectrum, across the different interfaith communities here in West Yorkshire, are extremely concerned about hypothermia and the mental health crisis.
Yes, certainly.
The problem we've got is that, for example, I spoke to one dear sister who works at the Bramwell's community enterprise in Dewsbury here in West Yorkshire, and she said that this is really heartbreaking. Actually, it said that a lot of the donors that were giving to her food bank, ordinary families, pensioners, people that were once classed as middle class, are now in tears ringing her up for help. She's going to cold, large houses where pensioners are residing, and it's extreme. And because the nights get cold.
And this is in Kirklees, is this? Is this in Kirklees?
This is in West Yorkshire.
Right,
the situation is even worse in the northeast. Spoke to people who are working for food banks in the northeast, and the situation is much worse there. Up there, you're talking about 45% of children in certain constituencies living below the poverty line. So the situation is grim, and sadly, we're seeing now more and more middle-class, hard-working families where mum and dad, partner one, partner two, are working minimum wage, and they still can't afford the bill.
Yes, well, I have heard, can I just intervene there? I have heard of such situations whereby middle-class families, or even businessmen that have lost their businesses, or, who are now bankrupt, who are now actually going to food banks. So I have heard of such situations whereby children were going to private schools, they were affluent, they had lovely cars, and now some of them have had to downsize in terms of selling their house, as well as having to now scrimp and save and trying to, work out where the next week's bills or food is going to come from, to payment for that. And some of them are actually really, really struggling. So those that have never been to food banks are now going to food banks as well. So we're seeing a wide spectrum of individuals that are now actually, on the poverty line or below the poverty line as a result of, this austerity that we in the UK are experiencing. So I wanted to ask you another question, is the cost of living crisis. I know we've touched upon it very briefly, but do you want to just briefly put us in the perspective of what actually it is, for those viewers that maybe are not or familiar with it? So just in a nutshell, please.
It's going to be, obviously, I think virtually every family in the UK is now seeing price rises in the supermarkets. We're seeing huge increased prices in oil, in grain, flour, in basics like milk, vegetables, and I think even the discounters now are having to increase prices rapidly. It's a spiral, Samina. So for example, So let's say there's decreased supply due to conflicts abroad. Okay, decreased supply of grain, which Ukraine was actually one of the major exporters of grain to the World Food Programme. So there's problems abroad with lack of grain, lack of basic foodstuffs being delivered to developing countries. But because of that supply and demand issue, because there's less supply and it's still the same amount of demand because we've got a rising population across the world, and because of these issues, so the prices of basic foodstuffs are rising, and inflation makes the situation worse. The cost of borrowing, because borrowing isn't just something you do when you wish to buy a car or a home. Day-to-day businesses, all the businesses are borrowing money regularly. So because interest rates are rising and inflation is a problem as well, okay, so it's further compounding the issue. So we're in a bit of an awful spiral here. And as we know now, Britain is in a recession. And sadly now, because of the situation right now, with rising prices, and because benefits haven't caught up yet and wages haven't caught up yet, we're seeing we're seeing industrial strife. So we're seeing even university lecturers, nurses, public sector workers going on strike. Recently, the RMT have been on strike, and I think it's a sad indictment. And I think the fact of the matter is that this is indicative of the fact that we have a broken system. Now, some may call this opinion, but I believe we have a broken system because a generation ago, if mother and father went to work, they could pay their mortgage, they could go on maybe that 1 or 2 holidays a year, they could afford maybe a car, they could afford some savings, and they could put something to aside for their retirement, and maybe even pay for a child's university. But now those days have completely gone now. We've got situations where family members having to go around with basic vegetables and cook for elders in cold, freezing homes. And we've got situations now where mothers and fathers, especially those with disabilities, with care responsibilities, have to decide, are we heating the home tonight or are we eating tonight?
Yes.
That is the heartbreaking choices. A very good friend of mine, Sister Tanisha from Dewsbury, who runs the Bramwell's organisation, she will drop off food to former donors, like I mentioned earlier, and the houses are freezing. The pensioner may be in bed, shivering.
Imran, I'm sorry, but we will have to stop you there just for a few minutes. We're now going to actually have a short break. But no doubt we will continue on with this topic after the break. So viewers, please do join us after the break. Bye for now.
At IPSA Legal Limited, we provide a wide variety of services specialising in immigration, asylum and British nationality law. We take out the stress of the situation whilst you get on with your life so that we can look after the legal issues. For a free 15-minute consultation, contact our experts on 0330 124 5700 or visit our website www.ibsa-legal.co.uk.
Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Questions on British Muslim TV with me, Mohammed Shafiq.
So critical, and it's so important for our younger generation to get involved in politics and run for office.
Is this vaccine, the various vaccines, halal?
No material which is forbidden in Islam is contained in this vaccine. So that's why it is absolutely halal.
When it's cold out, there is nothing I enjoy more than rustling up hearty winter meals. A quick trip to Sainsbury's helps me to prepare a warm bowl of dal and fresh chapatis with a cup of masala chai. This is all I need for a perfect winter night. Sainsbury's.
Through our immediate emergency response, we are providing cooked food and clean drinking water to these flood-affected people to bring ease in their life and help them ensure their nutrition level and ensure that they are not hungry and to beat the hunger.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back, viewers. My name is Samina Chughtai and I'm your host for today. And just before the break, we were speaking to Imran Safdar, and he was explaining to us about the effects of this cost of living, the current crisis that we have, the effects, the profound effects that it's having on every individual from all walks of society. So, Imran, if you're wanting to continue on with that, I would really appreciate that. Oh, okay. He's back on. We lost him for a few minutes there.
Apologies.
It's okay. These things happen, particularly when it's live TV.
Information, actually. Yeah, I was getting some information.
Yeah.
I just spoke to Councillor Davis again, and Councillor Buck giving me some of my local friends and colleagues who are involved in this sector are saying that there's now plans across the north of warm banks. Now, let me try to explain what that is.
What banks?
Because I know that some of the warm banks.
Warm banks. Is that a new initiative? What, within West Yorkshire? Or all over the UK?
These have been planned across the UK.
Right.
Let me tell you exactly what this is. So, I never thought about this concept before. I never thought we'd be discussing this. For example, right? Okay, so let's think about Liverpool, another deprived community. So there's a building called the Acorn Suite in Anfield.
Okay.
And every Tuesday and Thursday between 4 and 8, they're going to have a warm room, where children can eat for free, pensioners and people who are struggling can come and warm themselves up.
Okay.
What a sad indictment in 2022, and like I said, in one of the richest economies in the world, that we're having to open up public buildings, put the heating on, and put some teas and coffees on, maybe. And
I know it's really unfortunate, but can you just
a warm space?
Yes.
So we've got food banks, and now we've got warm banks.
And the warm bank. So obviously, this is the first time hearing about it. This new concept, the warm bank. You've said that the first one of its kind is going to be opening in Anfield.
Well, they're already open.
They've already opened. Up and down the country.
There's some in Liverpool. There's some in Newcastle right now.
Right.
And the heartbreaking fact is that this is not only a fuel poverty crisis. This is not only a crisis linked to fossil fuels and rising energy prices, because I'm sure all of us have noticed electric prices, gas prices have rocketed through the roof.
It's rocketed. I've heard of situations whereby people are actually, sat there in the cold. Children are saying, "Oh, Mom, Dad, can we put the heating on?" It's like, no, you can't. I mean, I've even actually spoken to my colleagues, and one of the hot topics, like I think for most of us, is, the cost of living crisis, and also, how do we keep ourselves warm during the winter? So it's having, profound effects on everybody. And so for myself, and I think currently, one of the main problems is, how do we keep ourselves warm? How do we actually keep ourselves warm, without using, gas and electricity as much as we were using before? So we are all trying to cut corners. And in light of, the cost of living crisis, we're also seeing supermarkets like Asda, Tesco, offering vouchers, I think, to lure people in, and also to help them as well through, if they do a big shop, then they're able to get a discount. And also, I think, in terms of food, eating, no doubt children are struggling, parents are struggling to bring in the food for them. So you've got places like this that are offering food, free food meals, or offering food and drinks at a limited price. So I think the effects of this, the living crisis, is so detrimental. And as you mentioned, it's having a detrimental effect on everybody. I think in the papers...
crisis as well, it's linked to the mental health crisis, because we've got increased rates of sofa surfing, homelessness. Councils have no idea where to put families who are struggling, because it's not only a food crisis,
yes, definitely,
hunger crisis, but it's also a housing crisis as well, because affordability has a role. Because the economy is tanking, we're seeing rising interest rates, inflation issues, and we're seeing rents rising, mortgages rising. So this is a housing issue, a general affordability issue. So this is I don't think it's a cost of living crisis, it's a cost of living catastrophe. Because right now we've got even nurses taking the food banks. That's the situation we're in now. Public sector workers, husbands and wives who are both working full-time in the NHS are now turning to food banks. And what a sad indictment that is. And I know you don't want to get political. I know you've got to remain independent and impartial, as a public service broadcaster. But I just simply cannot believe the Conservatives inflicted Liz Truss on us, because those few days, that awful mini budget has not just given us maximum damage. And the Bank of England had to step in, actually. We were a few days away from economic meltdown because the markets were terrified. They were spooked of where the UK economy was heading. We were already struggling. And then obviously this mini budget has made things significantly more and more challenging. And then if you go further back, let's look at the fraud that was involved in the bounce back scheme. Let's look at the billions that are wasted in buying defective PPE. Let's look at the billions that have been wasted on HS2. Various public sector projects. There is so much spending, so many billions have been wasted. Those billions could have been put to use in tackling this fuel poverty, energy crisis, as well as the cost of living crisis. Now, if you look at European, if you look at the Norwegian approach, Norway are marching towards sustainable projects regarding energy. So you look at solar panel, wind usage, geothermal.
Imran,
they're tackling this crisis in a big way.
Well, Imran, I think we're all trying to tackle, this crisis in different ways. Unfortunately, we've still not got there, because it's such a major problem, isn't it? The detrimental effects of this is just profound. So can we just go back to the cost of living crisis? And it's all relevant, but I'm just wanting to narrow it down. So for example, I was reading the newspaper recently, and I think food banks are handing out over, 63,000 meals a day. Have you come across that? And it's on the increase as well.
Yeah, so it's food banks are overrun now, sadly, and I'm seeing weekly desperate appeals. I mean, a friend of mine, Danny Burrows, who runs the Huddersfield Street Kitchen, and my family, myself, mother and brothers, and lots of other generous families working at the Huddersfield Victoria Road, Garcia Mushad here. We are sending food regularly, whether it's some home cooked food in mainly safe clean kitchens, as well as packed food, whether tinned goods and other places of worship. Also working with various street kitchen projects here in Huddersfield.
So you're working, just to clarify, you're actually working with various projects, mosques, different places of worship and other kind of like independent organisations whereby you're providing, food to such individuals on a voluntary basis.
Not only raising awareness, but also as a volunteer and a donor.
Okay.
And trying to attend where I can. But the feedback I'm getting from the volunteers that are attending more regularly is that they're overrun, and they're seeing people that are attending who were working. There's one particular story actually of a young father actually who's working 45 hours a week. His partner, she's quite poorly, and there are some days where he goes hungry, and to feed his children. And it's absolutely heartbreaking that in 2022 we are now in this terrible situation. And
yes, unfortunately.
I think there's been lots of reporting of this crisis. There was an ITV News report really from North Shields recently that was utterly heartbreaking about babies, and there was one particular case of a small child whose father had to walk 40 minutes to a relative's house to give the little boy a warm bath, and they said there's no gas in the house because the problem we have now is because debts have built.
Yes,
tenants sometimes leaving debts. Sometimes gas companies are not reconnecting that supply. So let's say you move into a social housing, or you move into a property.
Yes.
The previous tenant has left an immense debt. Because gas companies are not taking on new clients, new customers, it's challenging to get a tariff at a reasonable rate. It's virtually impossible, or get that gas connected. And some families, they're topping up £30-40 a week, and it's gone within days.
Oh yes, definitely. And the larger the household, the larger the house, it's even more difficult for those individuals.
And those on prepaid meters, it's extremely challenging despite the government help. So I think longer term, we need, I'm not going to say revolution, but we need drastic, radical changes in the country. We need to come off these prohibitively expensive, damaging, I'm not going to bring Islam. Okay, I'm not the greatest Muslim in the world. However, from an Islamic angle, is it wise to be destroying our planet by burning fossil fuels in this fashion? Morally, ethically, the system we are in, where we're burning fossil fuels, right? Is this, where we're burning coal, is this system sustainable? Morally, ethically, Islamically, environmentally, the system is not sustainable. We could have more use of solar panels. I think now there needs to be legislation.
But
for solar panels to be installed across Britain on a mass scale. But again,
but then at the same time, those solar panels, you know, if you're going to fund for those, if you're going to pay for them, they're very, very expensive. So not everyone can afford them, you know, unfortunately. But at the same time, you know, I wanted to ask you, what more do you think the government can do? Because we knew that this was going to happen. We were all avoiding, we were all apprehensive about the winter, and we knew that there was going to be this rising cost of living, utility bills, everything was going to increase. So what do you think the government can do? I know they're helping as much as they can. You know, they're giving out food vouchers, they're giving out discounts, they're giving out cost of living payments to those individuals that are on low incomes. So what more do you think the government can do to help?
Well, I don't think they are doing enough, actually, because if, for example, you look at what's going on in the European Union, there are now far-reaching measures to implement windfall taxes on the international energy companies that are making billions of extra profit a quarter. Now, look, you know, I consider myself a free market capitalist. I consider myself someone who's quite centered ground, quite progressive thinking. But yes, I am a free market capitalist. Yeah, I think profit is essential. However, there comes a level where it may not be morally, ethically correct to make tens of billions of pounds every single year while your customers are suffering with physical health, mental health problems related to fuel and food poverty.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Now the European Union, they've brought in legislation to bring in significant windfall taxes to subsidise bills. Why have you not got some far-reaching windfall taxes in the UK?
Imran, I know you're absolutely passionate. You know, this is a topic that we're all really, you know, passionate about at this moment in time because it's affecting everybody. Yes, but unfortunately, we've come to nearly the end of the show. You know, as always, we always run out of time. You know, it would be great to carry on, but for the viewers, if they're wanting to contact you, how can they contact you?
Bismillah, yeah, just Imran Safdar on Facebook, on Twitter, and give me your feedback, give me your opinion, because I want to relay messages to parliamentarians.
Okay, so sorry, today we're at the end of the show, but please do, viewers, tune